In the air, center field, Carrig and Johnston's got it.
Kyle Freeland entered August of 2026 with an ERA pushing 7. Not 7 strikeouts per 9, a nearly 7 ERA. And then seemingly out of nowhere, he went out against the Kansas City Royals and threw 9 innings. 5 hits, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts, and a complete game. And watching the reaction to it was what sent me down this entire rabbit hole. Because Coors Field was celebrating this dude like he had just accomplished something they had been waiting years to see. His teammates were loving it, the crowd was standing, and to be fair, they did have a reason to. This was somehow the first complete game of Kyle Freeland's entire career, coming in his 251st Major League start. Just so you guys can know how crazy that is, there have only been 2 men in Major League history to make over 250 career starts and not have a single complete game. One of them was Kyle Freeland. The other one is left-handed starting pitcher Eduardo Rodriguez. To go back to Freeland, Colorado hadn't even had a complete game from one of its pitchers since 2022. So watching everything go down, I started thinking, is Kyle Freeland's career secretly one of the strangest success stories in modern baseball? Because on paper, his numbers really don't look that special. And yet somehow, here we are, 2026. Kyle Freeland is 33 years old. He's been in the MLB for 10 seasons, made over 250 starts, and he's earned tens of millions of dollars. He's easily become one of the most accomplished pitchers in Colorado Rockies history. But most importantly, he's worn exactly one uniform doing it. And I think pitching for the Colorado Rockies, the place that probably made Kyle Freeland's statistic look worse, may have actually helped make his career longer. Please, let me explain. What's going on, everybody? I'm Jahji and welcome back to the channel. If you like strange sports theories, career deep dives, and finding stories hiding underneath the obvious numbers, make sure you subscribe because this one gets weird. Now let's remove the name Kyle Freeland for a second. Imagine I told you there was a 33-year-old starting pitcher with roughly this career resume. About 1,370 innings, a losing record at 68-100 as of this recording, and a career ERA around 4.70. What would you picture? Probably a journeyman. A guy who's played for 4 teams, maybe 5. Maybe he spent a year in somebody's bullpen and he's definitely signed a couple minor league deals somewhere. Or you'd assume he's currently sitting in AAA waiting for somebody's starter to get injured. And you assume that because that's normally how careers like this evolve. Baseball has a lot of middle of the rotation and back end starting pitchers. A bunch of useful guys, competent guys, and don't get me wrong, these are gentlemen that you absolutely need over a 162 game season. But at the end of the day, these are guys who are also eventually replaceable. Except Kyle Freeland hasn't been treated like a replaceable pitcher. Colorado has treated him like an institution, and that's where the numbers become deceiving because Freeland's career ERA might be around 4.70, but his career ERA plus, which adjusts for ballpark and league environment, is actually around league average or slightly better than it. Meaning Kyle Freeland has basically spent a decade looking worse on a baseball card than he actually has been. Now, Jahji, why is that? Well, I'm pretty sure if you watch baseball, you know the answer to that. It's because he pitches here. Coors Field in Denver, Colorado, over 5,000 feet above sea level. The ball carries farther, breaking pitches don't break, and pitchers have to make adjustments that players in basically every other organization don't have to think about to the same degree. So pitching to a 4.50 ERA or even a 4.7 ERA for Colorado is not necessarily the same accomplishment as doing it somewhere else. And Freeland figured that out extremely early. Now, before we go any further, people forget how good Kyle Freeland once was. See, he wasn't always just some innings eater. In 2018, Kyle Freeland was legitimately one of the best pitchers in baseball. He went 17 wins, 7 losses, a 2.85 ERA, and pitched over 200 innings. And that was good enough for 4th in National League Cy Young voting. But here's where his 2018 season should be getting a lot more eyes. His ERA at Coors Field that season, 2.40. That is absurd. You're talking about a pitcher dominating in an environment that has historically eaten pitchers alive. Then Colorado goes into the wild card game against the Cubs that year, and Freeland pitches on short rest, 3 days to be exact, in Wrigley Field. That night he gave Colorado more than 6 scoreless innings in a game that they eventually won. And at that point, if you're the Rockies, you're probably thinking, we found them. The hometown kid, born in Denver, drafted 8th overall by Colorado, developed by Colorado, and now he's becoming an ace in Colorado. Except he didn't really stay an ace. 2019 was disastrous. His ERA jumped over 6 and he got sent back to AAA. And while he eventually recovered, That version of 2018 Freeland never truly came back. From 2019 onwards, Kyle Freeland became much closer to what we're talking about today. A middle to back end major league starter. Sometimes very good, sometimes bad, usually somewhere in between, which is actually why what happened next matters so much. In April 2022, Colorado gave Freeland a 5-year, $64.5 million contract extension. And this is the single most important moment in this entire theory, because Freeland wasn't a free agent yet. The deal covered his remaining arbitration years and then bought out the first 3 seasons in which he would have been able to test the open market. Meaning instead of waiting until after 2023 and asking, what does the rest of the MLB think Kyle Freeland is worth? He never had to find that out. Colorado already knew what Kyle Freeland was worth to Colorado. And that's a huge distinction, because after signing that contract, his ERAs weren't exactly screaming a $15 million a year starting pitcher. But that didn't matter. The security had already been locked in, and that is where I started wondering, did Kyle Freeland accidentally make the smartest possible decision for Kyle Freeland? Because imagine the alternative. Let's say he leaves Colorado. Maybe his ERA improves. It probably does, at least to some extent. But I don't think he suddenly becomes a 3.20 ERA ace. His career road ERA is still around the mid-4s, so maybe Kyle Freeland leaves Colorado and becomes a 4.2 ERA type pitcher. Still pretty respectable, but do you know how many Kyle Freelands there are when you describe him in that manner? A lot. And eventually a team says, why are we paying a 32-year-old veteran when our 25-year-old prospect can give us something similar for league minimum? Then you get traded, then you sign a 1-year contract somewhere, and then at some point they toss you in the bullpen for long relief, and your next contract after that becomes a spring training invite. And before you know it, nobody's asking about you and you're gone. That's typically how those type of careers go outside of Colorado. And the best part about it, Colorado literally gave us a perfect comparison this season. Michael Lorenzen, everybody. Lorenzen is 34. His career ERA is slightly lower than Freeland's at roughly 4.36, and he's been a useful major leaguer for more than a decade. He's even thrown a no-hitter. And when you look at his baseball reference, how many teams has Michael Lorenzen played for? 7. Cincinnati, the Angels, Detroit, Philadelphia, Texas, Kansas City, and this year, Colorado. Now, when they signed him, they gave him a 1-year, $8 million contract. Meanwhile, Kyle Freeland is making around $16 million this season. Now, before somebody twists what I'm saying, no, that does not mean 2026 Kyle Freeland is objectively twice as valuable as Michael Lorenzen. That's not how contracts work. Freeland got his money because Colorado committed to him years ago. But that is my point. See, Michael Lorenzen's career is what happens to a lot of useful pitchers. You're valuable, but you're a commodity. Freeland stopped being a commodity, and at some point he became a Colorado specialist, and specialists are harder to replace. But there's another pitcher who makes this theory even more interesting. Aaron Cook. If Kyle Freeland has a spiritual predecessor in Rockies history, it's Aaron Cook. Cook spent about a decade with Colorado. His Rockies ERA was 4.53, and again, if you just looked at the ERA, you'd say, whatever, solid pitcher, nothing crazy. But Cook gave Colorado more than 1,300 innings, and he survived. And that's the key word throughout this video. Survival. Because there aren't many pitchers who can give you season after season of viable innings in Denver. And Cook eventually left Colorado. He pitched for Boston at age 33, and he finished the year with an ERA over 5.5. And after that, he never pitched another MLB game. Now I need to make something very clear. I am not saying leaving Colorado ended Aaron Cook's career. He was already aging, he was already declining. That would be twisting the evidence to fit the theory. But what Cook demonstrates is that the archetype is real. There have been pitchers whose traditional numbers looked ordinary, but whose ability to repeatedly survive Colorado made him extremely useful to Colorado. And Kyle Freeland has now become the ultimate version of that guy. He passed Cook in career starts for the Rockies. He's also passed him in innings pitched. Actually, Freeland has now thrown more innings for the Colorado Rockies than any pitcher in the history of the franchise. Think about that. It wasn't Pedro Estacio, nor the short-lived Ubaldo Jimenez, not even German Marquez, who made his debut a little earlier. It was Kyle Freeland, a guy with a career ERA approaching 5. That should tell you something about how difficult this job actually is. And not the job of being an MLB pitcher, because we know that already. But we're talking about pitching in Colorado. Now here's a counter argument, because I don't want this video becoming never leave Colorado. That's obviously stupid. happened. Jon Gray left. Gray was another Rockies first-round starting pitcher, and after 2021, he signed a 4-year deal with Texas, and immediately his traditional numbers got a lot prettier to look at. His first season with the Rangers produced a 3.96 ERA. He also ended up winning a World Series with Texas a couple years later, so leaving Colorado can absolutely work. In fact, if you're a pitcher, I completely understand why you'd want to. But Jon Gray proved something else as well. Outside of Colorado, he became what most people expected, a solid major league starting pitcher, not some hidden Cy Young monster that Coors had been disguising. And once you enter that broader category of pretty good starting pitcher, you're suddenly competing against everybody. Meanwhile, Colorado already knew exactly what Freeland could do for them, and that's the advantage. Which brings us back to today, because Kyle Freeland has been bad in 2026. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. As of August 11th, his ERA is at 6.63, and the funniest thing is, you can't even blame Coors this time. He's actually been worse on the road. So if you're watching this thinking you're just making excuses for him because he pitches in Colorado, no. Kyle Freeland has been terrible this year. Period. His underlying numbers suggest he probably hasn't pitched quite as horribly as 6.63 would indicate, but this has not been a good season no matter how you put it. But regardless, he's still making his starts, he's still getting the baseball, and he's still being treated as one of the faces of the pitching staff. And then in the midst of all of that, he goes out and throws this complete game. Suddenly, 10 years of history come pouring out of everybody. That's why that game hit me differently. It wasn't just pitcher with bad ERA has a good night. It felt like a career achievement because Colorado remembers all of it. The hometown kid, the 2018 season, that playoff start that same year, the terrible years, and the sprinkled in good years in between. They remembered all of his injuries and him reaching the 1,000 strikeout club. And for it to all culminate in his first career complete game, it shows he means something in Colorado. Would Kyle Freeland mean that much somewhere else? I don't know. And that's the theory. Because there's a very real chance this is the end of Freeland's time in Colorado, even Freeland has publicly acknowledged that he doesn't necessarily expect to be part of the organization going forward, and if that's true, this becomes one of the most interesting free agent experiments of the offseason. Because for the first time in his career, the market may finally get to answer the question, what is Kyle Freeland worth when you remove the words Colorado Rocky from his resume? Does another team look at the 6.63 ERA and say, no thanks? Or does somebody look deeper and say, wait a minute, this dude has thrown nearly 1,400 major league innings. He's left-handed. He survived Coors Field for a decade. Maybe there's something here. Does he get a guaranteed rotation spot? A 1-year deal? Does he become a swingman? Does he bounce around for another 4 years? Or does leaving Colorado expose the exact career cliff that he's managed to avoid for 10 seasons? We genuinely don't know yet. But that's what continues to build my intrigue with this case. Because maybe Kyle Freeland's career contains one of baseball's strangest paradoxes. He stayed in the environment that made his numbers look worse, and by doing that, he may have made himself more valuable, not to baseball as a whole, but to the one organization that knew exactly how difficult his job was. Anywhere else, a 4.5 ERA starting pitcher might just be another guy. In Colorado, a pitcher who can give you 150 plus innings, take the ball every 5th day, and not completely collapse at altitude can become a franchise record holder. So I'll leave you with this question. Would you rather have the prettier resume or the longer career? Would Kyle Freeland have been better off leaving Colorado years ago, lowering his ERA and bouncing around the league trying to extend his career that way? Or did he figure out something almost nobody talks about? Sometimes the best way to survive professional sports isn't being the most talented player available. It's becoming extremely difficult for one organization to replace you. Because Kyle Freeland may have spent his career pitching in the worst place imaginable for statistics, but ironically, it might have been the perfect place for Kyle Freeland. If you made it this far, seriously, thank you for watching. Let me know down in the comments whether you buy the theory, and more importantly, if Freeland does leave Colorado after this season, what do you think happens to him next? Does another team unlock something? Does he become a journeyman? Or 2 years from now, are we looking back saying Colorado really was the only place where his career made sense? Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new, and send this to that one baseball fan who's gonna tell us that we're completely wrong. And until next time, Jahji, out!
Freeland grew up in Colorado, just drafted 8th overall by the Colorado Rockies.